Perfect. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jesus Mingaro. I'm the sales manager at Prosperon Network, and I welcome you to the webinar that Prosperon have arranged in collaboration with NetFort. I got here with me Aislinn Brenner. She's the Customer Technical Support Manager at NetFort. Aislinn, are you with us?
I am indeed. Thanks, Jesus. Good morning, everybody.
Perfect. And with her, we also have NetFort CEO, John Brosnan. John?
Good morning, everybody.
Fantastic. So we're all on the line. So guys, obviously the first session or the first bit of the session is going to be driven by Aislinn. Aislinn, what are you going to talk about today?
Thanks, Jesus. Again, just good morning to everybody on the webinar. It's Aisling here, and just a quick introduction. I look after the customer technical support team here at NetFort, and as Jesus said, I'm joined on the call by John Brosnan. He's our CEO. I'm one of the co-founders of NetFort, and just in a short little while, John will discuss GDPR, do a couple of slides there, and then share with you some features that might be interesting to have in NetFort LANGuardian for GDPR compliance, just really how the LANGuardian can help meet these regulations. I'm going to cover off an intro to LANGuardian, just for anybody that's on the webinar this morning that isn't familiar with the product, and I will go through some use cases using our online demo with a particular focus on security, on stuff like ransomware, on user and file activity monitoring. So that's the plan.
Perfect. So certainly two very hot topics. GDPR is all over, is all over the place, and certainly security has become more and more important for everyone. Ransomware, seems to be the trendiest word ever. Everyone is worried about hacking and data protection and Bitcoin mining and things like that. So I think this webinar is going to be very, very useful for everyone. Before we go on, just a general reminder that this webinar is interactive, and for us it's very, very important to count with your participation, because we can keep the session as useful as possible, and then we can ensure that you guys walk away with valuable insight. For that, we have two ways of getting your input. The first one is going to be by voting on the polls that will be displayed on your screen. We'll be asking you a couple of questions throughout the session, and we'd kindly request that you guys submit your answer, because based on the responses that we get, we can see better the content displayed, the demos and the scenarios and so on. And the other way for you guys to interact with us is going to be by asking direct questions. These direct questions can be typed on the chat box that you have on the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar panel, sorry. We'll be monitoring these questions very closely, and as the session progresses, we either read them back to the speaker or we'll cover them on the Q&A sessions at the end. So moving forward, just as a bit of introduction about who Prosperon are, we're the leading UK authority on deploying, tuning and training users of IT management solutions, including NetFort and SolarWinds. Certainly SolarWinds is our core business, but SolarWinds have many, many gaps, and we try to align with some other companies like NetFort to try to cover those gaps and provide kind of a robust solution to cover your IT management needs. There's mainly three reasons or areas why customers engage with us. Some of them are looking for enhance their value. They may have already the tools in place. They may be looking for ways of optimizing what they get out of the tool. They may be looking to re-implement the tool when the tool has been put in place for a while and is no longer fit for purpose. Or they may be looking for assistance to obviously keep that tool up to date, or perhaps integrated with the rest of the ecosystem. We also get asked to collaborate or to help users in kind of a pre-sales, when they may be considering an IT management tool, or perhaps is being benchmarked against some competitors. They may be looking for understanding the implications of what that solution is going to have to the business. We're talking both from a financial perspective and also from a technical perspective. So things such as the design, how the deployment is going to be, phase deployment, the type of milestones that they may need to achieve along the way, and so on. And finally, the last I guess type of engagement that we do is providing support. We obviously are value-added reseller, and any license that are sold through us or that are purchased from us, we complement the support or enhance the support that is provided by every vendor. Obviously, we tend to be a much smaller company than the companies that we represent, and it turns into being way more flexible and perhaps a bit more approachable, if that makes sense. So I think, having said that, the next slide is going to be the first poll, so which I'm going to launch in a sec. So here it is, guys. You should have the poll displayed on your screen. Hopefully, you can start voting. Responses tends to be 50-50. We're gonna give a few more seconds before closing the poll, and then we can review the answers. Perfect. So I think we have collected enough votes pretty much for everyone. So we're gonna close the poll. I'm gonna share the results. And Aislinn, what did this tell you? It's literally 50-50. So 50% of the audience admits that the current monitoring solution does not provide visibility into user and file activity. The other 50% seem to be a bit better covered because it does provide some sort of visibility into user and file activity monitoring. Is that kind of an expected answer? Would you expect that sort of response, Aislinn?
Well, yes, I think the key thing there is it's 50-50, and when analyzing network user and file activity traffic, it's definitely a strategy and it's a concern for quite a few of the users on the call today, and it's critical these days. It certainly is critical due to stuff like compliance and for different security reasons to have visibility into what they're doing and to be able to provide an audit trail on file activity. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised there.
There's one thing, I guess, because the question number 2 could be very wide and very open. We provide some visibility, but how much is some, and is it enough? I guess some users may be driven by obviously the recent standards like GDPR. So 3 months ago, it wasn't imperative to have that sort of visibility. In 2 months from now, it will be. So, that some may not necessarily be enough. So hopefully the webinar will clarify what areas perhaps you have to look at and the sort of tools that can help you achieve that level of visibility. So, Aislinn, I think the next slide is for you.
Thanks, Jesus. Well, just a couple of key points, I suppose, to make here on this slide. There's a little bit of background there about our company. Again, just highlighting the fact that, we've been around since 2002. We have our headquarters in Galway. But, moving along there, a little bit of information about our platform. The key thing there would be our customers, because it really is all about our customers. And we have domestic customers, quite international ones there as well, throughout the UK, the USA, EMEA regions, and, ranging from SMEs right through to some really large enterprises. If you take the likes of McGraw-Hill there, that have nations, other names too, like Paddy Power, Betfair. So I suppose just the point to get across here is that the NetFort product gets used in a wide range of different industry sectors as well. Whether, and we'll move to that in a little bit in more detail, but whether it's financial or local and national government, healthcare, etc. So we have a very strong global customer base. Moving to the next slide.
Got stuck, sorry about that. There we go.
No, not at all. So it's just really, what is NetFort LANGuardian? LANGuardian, it's all about a single point of reference for network and for user activity monitoring. And if we think about the user activity side of things, it's the ability to be able to always know what users are doing, and whether that's network troubleshooting. Maybe you're trying to pinpoint poor network performance or something because of fluctuating bandwidth. It's about reports. It's about having real-time dashboards and being able to do historical reporting. And and other stuff too, like trends and search, being able to search by IP, by user, and all of that. But I suppose just to pick up there on the word internal, I mean, yes, you know, it's a single point of reference for internal, but it goes beyond that. So, you know, when analyzing network traffic, we would often recommend that a good strategy is maybe to start monitoring internally, so that's on the core, but you can of course go beyond that and monitor stuff like your DMZ, or you know, the edge of your network, you know, by monitoring the firewalls or things like that. But even go beyond that and maybe monitor remote networks. So if you have WAN links, or even decide, right, I have visibility in my physical network, maybe I'd like to monitor virtual environments. So you can do that too with LANGuardian and monitor maybe east-west traffic on virtual platforms. So just what is LANGuardian? It's a single point of reference for all internal network and user activity. Moving to the next slide.
Aisling, I'm sure that's obviously, hopefully on the next slide, you're going to be able to detail a bit more what LANGuardian is about and things like that. But, you know, working in this sort of markets, many of the people that are in the audience are going to have monitoring tools like SolarWinds, Xenos, PRTG, you know, you name it. And a good question is going to be, well, you know, I already have some sort of visibility over my network, right? I'm already monitoring network nodes, or some of them may even be collecting NetFlow as of traffic analysis. What would be the main differentiator, I guess, with the visibility that LANGuardian can provide and these sort of traditional tools?
Okay, well, this is something, I suppose we're going to get to it maybe a little bit more, and I'm going to be able to, I suppose, hopefully demonstrate it via the demo. But you know, at the core, we're very much all about network analysis. So that's where we find the information. I suppose we're not a log reader. We're not an agent tool. We analyze network traffic. Okay, so what we do is we pull metadata. Now that could be anything from something like a file name to maybe an SSL cert version. We're not an appliance. And the key point that we're trying to today is that we can deliver what's called NetFort metadata. So comparing it to flow tools and maybe SNMP tools or that type of thing, we're giving you human readable data, okay, that we extract from network packets. And that can do stuff then, Jesus, like maybe flows, it can describe events, it can describe stuff like inventory on the network. We're a passive tool. And we can't have a negative impact on the network. And the other thing as well, just to point out, is just the ease in which you can implement it. And I think that's critical, and I'd say you'd agree as well. You know, a lot of people now, time is of essence, and you know, due to a lack of resources, it's really important that you can deploy and implement a tool easily. Okay, but we're different to an MP tool, we're different to a flow tool, and because we provide metadata, so as I said, things like usernames, things like file names, rich metadata, and I'll be able to demonstrate that in more detail as we move to the demo in a little while.
Very good response, Aisling.
This slide, you know, there's a lot of information here, but the key things there highlighted in blue is that it's possible to download and deploy in a couple of minutes, and that really is true. Whether you decide to deploy it on something like a dedicated server or choose a different route and go Hyper-V, maybe if you're a Microsoft house, or maybe ESX. And as I mentioned, you know, there's so many different points on the network where you could monitor, but we often feel that there's two key points to start with getting visibility, and that could be, you know, the core of the network and at the edge, at the perimeter, so that you can keep an eye on what's going in and what's going out. And if we move to the next slide, this is just, I suppose the point what I want to try to get across here would be how we acquire data, okay, and hopefully everybody on the call then, you know, this morning can maybe understand a little bit better how a tool such as LANGuardian could fit into their network. Now, this is a very simple type of a deployment, but the key thing is our primary data source is raw traffic or packet data. Okay, and this is a small network, as I said, but what we've done there is we found the core switch, we've plugged in there, and we're monitoring all the traffic going to and from the servers and maybe the internet and stuff like that. So the key point is we want to plug an port, a mirror port, a tap. We want a copy of data. And then LANGuardian as a passive solution can go and monitor 24/7. And of course, yes, you know, we can go and inform other tools like firewalls or NACs or something like that to block or disconnect, to disconnect. But that's just a first kind of a explanation as to how it could fit. Now, I'm fairly sure that this diagram doesn't depict your network. It's probably a little bit too simple. But if we move to the next slide in the deck, it's for a lot of you, it's probably a network that your network looks like more. And what we have done here is we have introduced sensors in different parts of the network. So what we have here is we have a remote site. Now that could be a data center, that could be a second data center or something like that. But the point I suppose I'm trying to make here is that you can scale the LANGuardian system up from something like a single sensor right up to some 50 to 60 sensors. And I don't know if you recall, but going back to some of the customer logos that we shared with you at the start of the call, one was McGraw-Hill, and that's a good example of one of those large scale deployments, because they have something like maybe 60 or 70 sensors deployed right across the globe. Another point too that I'd like to make here would be that we support 1 gig and 10 gig network interfaces, and I think that's important as well, because I think so many networks these days are just getting busier, and there's more data. So it is possible to configure a LANGuardian sensor in either 1 gig with 1 gig or either 10 gig support. So Jesus, just a tiny little bit more on the sensors. If the sensor was deployed, if a sensor was deployed, the packet analysis and all of that would be done at the remote site, and then the metadata would get sent across the WAN. So it's stored there in one central location up at your HQ. Again, that's single pane of glass. So you have one. Now, there is one thing to mention, I suppose, and that's the username piece of data. We actually don't get that from the network traffic. This is crucial metadata, usernames, but we actually acquire that from Active Directory. So the LANGuardian queries AD, and that allows us to match an IP address with a username. So again, you know, no agents here. We're not seeing introduction of any logs, things like that, and we're not seeing the introduction of any new software, and certainly no requirement to put anything onto clients or servers.
I guess the diagram proves the fact that it's an non-invasive tool, right? Because you're literally spanning, mirroring a port rather than having to sampling traffic and summarize it into NetFlow, which obviously not only has an impact on the CPU of the switch, is also going to have an overhead from a network perspective up around 2.5% of the traffic. So obviously a 10 gig link is going to generate quite a lot of traffic. There's a question coming in from Adrian Madley. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer. It's related actually to this slide. So obviously he's asking regarding the span port, that is only one source. And Adrian, yes, is correct. If you span a port, that's the port that is going to be connected to LANGuardian. When you span a port, you can select which is the interfaces that you want to mirror. So you're correct. The question that he has is, how many feeds can a single server handle?
Okay, so I think what we're talking about there is anything up to two sensors. Okay, so for a standalone LANGuardian implementation, the maximum number of feeds there for a sensor would be 2. 2 feeds. Okay, but you're absolutely right. Yes, passive and LANGuardian can't have a negative impact on the network. So 2
Okay,
feeds.
so to clarify, per prop you will have 2 feeds, and obviously you deploy more sensors or more props in order to scale it up or to pull it into remote locations, correct?
Correct.
Fantastic. Perfect. Do you want me to move to the next slide?
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully I've answered that question correctly, but again, it wouldn't be my immediate area of expertise, licensing and that type of thing. So if it's okay as well, maybe just after the webinar, I'll get that all clarified just in case
yeah, absolutely.
there's any
problem at all.
no problem whatsoever. Okay, so again, just quickly on this slide. So, as you can see, we're all over the world, and anything from small networks with 50, 100 users right up to really big networks with hundreds of thousands of users, different sectors again, and if we maybe focus in there on the UK, I'm trying to pull out a couple of names there that you might be familiar with. We have the UK Department of Transport.
BT, I guess. It's probably one of the biggest here, yeah.
BT is somewhere there. Very good, very good. So lots of big companies, lots of different sectors. One item I'd just like to highlight would be down there at the bottom right-hand side of that slide, and that's the different forms of integration and the different forms of partnerships here that we support. Okay, so we have theme systems, great, all that kind of thing, and so and I think it's something actually that John may be able to show as well, and that's the ability to integrate LANGuardian with Solo. I think he'll show that in a demo in a short little while. So there's lots of good stuff happening there in the whole area of partnerships and automations, and it is possible to get LANGuardian to talk to maybe some other third-party products that you use on your network. And again, I think on the slides, I think I'm done with slides for the moment, and I think if it's okay there, maybe if you could hand over control, and I'm going to go through some features now in the LANGuardian interface. Attention there to the system that I'm using for the purpose of this demo. You go to netfort.com. So just a couple of key components of the LANGuardian there. We've logged in and we've landed on dashboards, and dashboards, just take a quick look down here. They're a real-time view, okay? And you mentioned other tools there, Jesus, a short while ago. A lot of tools these days have dashboards, and they are editable, they're customizable, and you can do things like create your own ones. And on this particular LANGuardian system, we have a few different dashboards created. But from working with customers, it's a must for them to be able to customize dashboards. So they might have maybe remote sites, maybe compliance is their thing, or maybe it's DDoS, or so they can create their own dashboards, and we have lots of templates and ideas there that we can share if that's your type of thing. So again, just dashboards, collection of reports, and trends and different things in pie charts. Okay, and the point to make is just that they're all connected to each other. So look at, we've a lot to get through, but one of the things that I want to show off is ransomware, and it's a ransomware dashboard that we have, and we know it's a current problem on networks, and we know that everybody on the call today needs to know a little bit. Everybody needs to know a little bit more, okay? And just we want to keep you up to date. So I suppose if you've heard about an issue of ransomware, you need to be able to present and drill down on it. So knowing how to identify ransomware and contain it is kind of essential, I think, Jesus, especially in your whole kind of network security scheme of things. So you can use LANGuardian to identify ransomware, and we have some kind of reports here on the left-hand side that show how you can monitor traffic going to from file servers, and we can do really good stuff as well, such as reporting on file renames. Okay, using things like IDS as well to spot signatures of known ransomware variants. So there's a couple of different ways that we detect ransomware. Okay, so you have over here would be, these are like extensions, okay, that can be associated with WannaCry. So that might be something that's worth looking out for. Down here in the domains, one of the things that you have would be the ability to detect any device in your network that might be contacting these odd domains, okay, that are associated with ransomware and some of the outbreaks there. So, and then finally, this ransomware note, okay. Now, on the right-hand side, we've got powerful stuff like renames, and we all know that, you know, renames really, those type of actions aren't common, and when ransomware strikes, it can often become the most common action. So what we're doing here is we're trending renames, and it's kind of normal, maybe a rename every couple of seconds, but if your network gets hit with ransomware, that threshold will spike, and you can configure an immediate alert. So that's pretty useful, as well as using the LANGuardian to detect SMB1. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're actually rooting out SMB1 clients and servers on the network. And what I'm saying here is, right, the easiest thing to do is disable SMB1. And that the reason for that is that it reduces the attack vector of your network. So what I showed there was our ransomware dashboard gets shipped as part of a standard LANGuardian license and is fully customizable. We can work with you to tweak the rename settings, and you can customize the system to get alerts. Okay. Now, if we go back to the couple of the points that I was trying to make too was around user and file activity monitoring. I want to just show as well that it's really, really easy to, you know, to pivot on a user to look a little bit closer at user activity. Okay, so if you go to the top of the system, you have this really nice feature called search. And let's just say that we're trying to investigate what a user has done on the network. So here we go. We type in the username. Now, you just need part of the name. And this is their Active Directory username. And we can then click on run. Okay, and we can find out exactly what a user is doing on the network. And the thing here is that, you know, we're not looking, Jesus, at bits and bytes. We're getting readable data, kind of layer 7 type stuff, what your users are doing. Okay, and we know quite a lot. We know that, you know, this user is doing a lot of file share, a lot of web, a lot of secure web. And over here on the right hand side, we can see some security events that have been detected on their systems. It's quite a lot of information here, but what I might do for the purposes of this demo is just pick 2. So one would be maybe file share. Okay, so let's drill down on the file share traffic. So just one click from the dashboard, we can see exactly what files this user has been moving and accessing across the network. Okay, and you know, that could result in a large amount of SMB traffic, who knows? And if we drill down a little bit further, great thing as well is we can get actions. That's really, really important these days. Okay, in particular if somebody deleted a file or rename, and again we have the username. Okay, and just back again once more.
I think it's a very good point,
Yes.
Ashley, that you made there, because you know, kind of layer 7 information can only be gathered when using NetFlow, if you're collecting MBAR2 and things like that with ISR routers, kind of high-end, fairly modern Cisco equipment, but you wouldn't really get down to the file name, for example. And I think that's extremely powerful to understand what's really happened. And obviously we're taking that across the network, not necessarily just on your break point to the internet. So.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, agree. We started off with a level view of applications, but it's that ability to drill down to get the clients, and then going down that little bit further and extracting the metadata. So we got the timestamp, we got things like the action, and we got the usernames if that was required too. Okay. Just to point out on HTTP, we could do something similar. We could drill down on HTTP traffic for Leo, and we can see that Leo's doing, seems to be a lot of Microsoft.com. We could drill down on that again and get a little bit more detail, such as the URI. So there we go, Jesus. And you can see then exactly what that user is doing on those websites and the bandwidth there too. Okay. And HTTPS, because it is important, and it's nice to know exactly what visibility we can get into HTTPS traffic. So let me just show that off quickly. We can drill into it. We can see the payload. We know that, but with NetFort LANGuardian, we can have the SSL cert setup, and from that we can pull out the host name. So we can see Dropbox or the domain name google.com, and these are these Dropbox sites allow you to do online file sharing and things like that. So we're able to reveal the type of service that the user is going to, and that can be definitely more accurate reverse lookup. Right, so again, as Jesus said, we're doing a little bit more than a flow tool here. Okay, we're pulling data out that's not encrypted, and what we're doing is we're storing it and providing it in a human readable format. And the next thing in my and then I'm going to be nearly done, is I just want to highlight this search facility again at the top, because it is quite powerful. It can also be used as a report finder. Okay, so whatever the issue is, maybe you want to inspect SQL traffic a little bit closer, or maybe you're having some broadcast UDP issues on the network, or maybe it's something proxy related and you're trying to decode proxy to internet traffic. The report finder is very, very powerful. Okay, but for the purposes of the demo today, I also want to show off the ability to be able to maybe the search. So let's just say that a document went missing on the internet. Really, the only bit of information we have to go on is the name of the document, and we know that it was named accounts. So what we would do here is we would type in the account's name. We don't such know the time. We change it if we need to. Run search. Okay. And as you can see there in the background, the LANGuardian system has the intelligence to know that what we're trying to do is we're trying to do some file activity monitoring. And if we take a look to see what we have found, we've managed to get the information within 2 clicks. We can see that this is the source IP, this is the file server, this is the file, the accounts dot, it looks like it was a database, and this is the delete action. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a username for this activity. So just by clicking up here, we can do the deletion by username, if that's possible. It might be. Try. There we go. So Leo, he's up to no good again. Well, not necessarily, but it's just another search. A document went missing, and within a couple of seconds, we were able to get down to the detail there that it was Leo that deleted that file, and then we can take whatever action is required. I also, just for everybody on the call today, maybe that uses maybe Microsoft basis. One of the things I wanted to point out as well is, database activity monitoring is critical. We have a very powerful reporting menu here. So if SQL monitoring is your thing, you can go directly into our SQL reports and do something like maybe pull up a SQL statement report, okay? And maybe do like want to find out about any deleted or dropped SQL databases on my network. Okay, again, really, really powerful. So just want to show that there's a good reporting menu behind the scenes, very comprehensive. It really opens up the system. And what we're doing there is at SQL, but you could do something like maybe look at BitTorrent. So there's lots and lots of metadata, everybody behind the scenes. Two final things to finish on. One is DNS and the other is GOIP. Back to the report, being able to use the LANGuardian 2 to be able to build an inventory of what clients are on your network is really, really useful. And if you have DNS here, you can pull back information here about DNS servers on the network, okay? And you could do the similar thing for, DNS clients and all of that. But I want to point out that we have a very powerful alerting engine where you can also define whitelists of valid servers. So in this example, whitelist my valid DNS servers and then get alerts if a user tried to access any other DNS servers, and we can too. So the last thing was just GOIP. Just show this off maybe finally, Jesus, if we have the time.
Absolutely. There's one question that I'll probably need to pose to you. I think it's going to be a bit complex. However, once you show the geolocation, we can cover that.
Excellent. And for anybody that isn't familiar with GOIP, really what it is it's a method of using a network device. They're geographic by using the IP address, and we've got some nice clued-in reports here, GeoIP based reports that to figure out exactly what servers users devices are connecting to from, say, maybe to outside of the network, and vice versa. You can also check for suspicious inbound activity. Okay, so if you were to see maybe coming in from maybe the likes of Russia or wherever, maybe that's suspicious, and you can take a close. Okay, so I just there was 4 or 5 things there. I was trying to demonstrate really the ability to use LANGuardian to to do file activity monitoring, look at a user in closer detail, and all that type of thing. So I think Jesus, thank you.
There was a question from Adrian. As I said, I'm not entirely sure if you're going to be able to answer it. It's regarding obviously how you deploy NetFort LANGuardian in an environment where they use Cisco application-centric infrastructure. Now, ACI is very similar to SDN, well, to a degree, in that they obviously microsegment the network and create some sort of firewall west, east firewall, if that makes sense. Obviously, his point is that because we have such a microsegmented network, it's very, very difficult to get traffic from these network segments because there's no route to the spam port. And it's a fair point. And he's saying he's got over 1,000 VLANs. So obviously,
really, okay,
on a per feet, it would be not practical. So I don't know if you come across this sort of a scenario.
Well, over the last couple of days, I haven't, but just due, I suppose, to the complexity of his query, maybe what we could do is we could talk to that particular customer offline. And
not a problem.
Absolutely, and being able to expand it out, maybe getting something like a network diagram and things like that, we can see exactly what possibilities there are there in order for Adrian to get visibility Okay.
Perfect. All right, brilliant. So I take now would be John's turn. I believe, Aisling, have you?
Yes.
Okay. Shall I make John the presenter as well?
Can you guys see my screen there? You see it, guys?
Yeah, we can see your screen now, John.
Right, thanks,
So,
Ashton.
Adrian, just before we kick off on the GDPR, Adrian, I'll come back to you offline regarding, how potentially or how the potential deployment for the environments where Cisco API is deployed or is in place, how we perhaps work around this sort of environments.
Yeah, no problem. Listen, thanks very much, everybody. Thanks, Ashton. Well done. I'm going to go through about 4 or 5 slides, guys. I'll try and keep it to 5 or 6 minutes. Try and keep it very quick. I guess, as everybody's been talking on the phone in the last few minutes, even about about monitoring, and the whole focus on monitoring these days seems to have gone up a level, and there's obviously a number of reasons for that. I think networks are getting more complex, as even the last question has shown. And trying to keep up with the networks and what's on them, what's happening on them is getting more difficult, and people have lack of resources and lack of time. I was talking to a customer recently, and they had it was an e-commerce type customer, and they had a huge 4-hour outage. And he was just telling me after, he said it was due to a software load balancer, and they're trying to get it working again. So, I guess there's lots of, everything is moving to software maybe, and that's another complexity that's causing issues. But, one of the issues, I guess, that's driving the increased focus on monitoring these days is obviously security, because no matter what you do, the bad stuff is going to happen, and it's almost impossible to stop it. And the other aspect of that is compliance. So compliance, if you have continuous visibility and continuously monitor what's going on in the network, you have a good shot, because then you can hopefully detect stuff and troubleshoot it very quickly. So I guess very quickly, what happened with us is that we have, as Ashling has shown, we have some very good data about what's happening on the network, about what users are doing, about shared data, about what's on the network. And by simply analyzing network traffic in an application-centric way and enriching it with username information. So we try and do the heavy lifting in the software to make it easier for people to see what's going on. And we just before Christmas, we got a customer in France, a medical research organization, and when we did our questionnaire about why they purchased the software, they came back and said, we purchased it for GDPR, and these are what our requirements are. These are their words on the slide, like about shared files and so on. And now we do not, and there is no solution out there that satisfies everything about GDPR. So we're not the complete solution, and we're very careful about jumping on a GDPR bandwagon. But for especially our customers that already have the system and people are looking at a way of getting visibility and so on, we know we can help because we have some good data. As people have researched GDPR, and it is, and I've done a lot of work on it myself recently over the last few months since we got the customer win. It's a pretty, it's kind of tough stuff to read, that's for sure. But it says like stuff like continuously monitoring, but it's very vague. But obviously, the goal here is to avoid a breach. So it's trying to drive people to have a few tick boxes to say, what is the best practice that we can do to address the security aspect of GDPR. And as we talk to some of our partners around Europe, there are a number of best practices that people are looking at. There's a UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, 10 steps to cybersecurity. There's ISO 27001, and there's another one which is the old standards top 20, which is the CIS CSC 20, and they're the ones that we've kind of picked at the moment because we found them very practical and easy and realistic. So there's 20 kind of controls, and like for example, if I go to the next slide, the first 5, which is inventory of authorized and unauthorized devices on the software and so on, a lot of them are just very practical and they make a lot of sense. And as we talk to our customers out there and people that we've met, mostly in Ireland, to be honest, and some in Europe, some of the customers are saying to us, what we're trying to do is get the first 5 done before May. So the first 5 are the critical ones. And a lot of our customers are saying, oh, that's our goal. You know, just try and get the first 5 done and get that step done. And it's interesting, you know, that as we talk to them and they're going along. And a lot of these things that people already do, like, you know, according to CSC 1, you have to build up, you know, what's on your network, build up an accurate picture of the devices on your network, identify the servers and so on. And it says, you know, for example, that you should do this with scanning and you should do passively with traffic. And if you look at traffic analysis, and it's based on the fact that every user, every device, every application on the network leaves a trail. Now you have to see that trail, but it's real time. So if a device pops up on the network and it's a new device, you don't have to scan for it. It happens immediately. It's a real-time alert on that device. So that's kind of the angle around traffic. It complements, for example, and this aspect of periodic scanning from a scanning type system. So, you know, our take on it is that, you know, with traffic and traffic analysis, you can see a lot of activity that really helps, and you can continuously monitor and you can keep it, which obviously very helps with a lot of the CSC regulations around data protection, as Aisling has shown. We have a lot of data. CSC 19 is around incident response, and we have, like with the search boxes Aisling has shown us on, we have a lot of granular data and context in place. So as was mentioned in the last few minutes, we extract metadata from traffic. We do not keep all the packets. So we have about a 400 to 1 data reduction over full packet capture. If you look at where we fit, we kind of fit somewhere between NetFlow, which looks at the headers, and full packet capture. We fit in between. We thought there was a gap, that we have some metadata that would mean that you'd have still a bit more detail than NetFlow, but you wouldn't have to keep all the packets, and so you could have it more readable and keep it for longer. So just very quickly,
John, I wonder, just before we leave the subject, obviously because you've mentioned a few ways, I guess, or approaches to cover the GDPR. There's a poll that we have in here that covers them all, and I wonder if it's going to be useful for you to understand what people think, or what are the sort of approach that they're going to be taking towards cybersecurity. Based on those responses, you may be able to you know, highlight one or the other. Would it be worth to launch the poll?
Sure, yeah. Well, I just show one more thing, and I hand it back to you. Just on our, and so we've, for example, on the SolarWinds system, we have a CIS Critical Security Controls tab. So if I just go back here, so we've enhanced and we've added our data to SolarWinds around user activity, so you get a very single pane of glass, and you get that detail on GDPR. So let me just go back. Let me hand controls back to you, so you can do the poll.
There's no need. I think I can lodge the poll. You keep the demo just in case, because if there are any questions that require demo, you already have it. I think I can launch the poll as I did right now, without having to get the controls back. So this poll in essence is what are you gonna do? What sort of a standard are you going, or approach are you gonna follow to try to cover you know, the GDPR, you know, to try to be compliant with it? And there's obviously 5 options there. Pretty much all of them have been covered by you: the ISO 27001, the CSC 20 security controls, just on a best practice, perhaps by a consultant, we're not doing absolutely anything, or what's been recommended by the UK's National Security Centre. So let's collect a few more votes, and then we share the results. Hopefully that may give you kind of an insight as to, you know, what sort of steps people are taking to cover this. So I think the poll has stopped now, so let's close it and share the results. So there you go. I think pretty much 50% of the audience is going to be guided by the UK National Cybersecurity Centre, and closely followed by the ISO 27001. And there's some 17% of people that they're just happy as they are. So yeah, they're not going to do anything. So
yeah, very good, very interesting, very interesting. Thanks for that. It's just very good.
No worries. So you should be able to continue the demo and so on.
Thank you very much. I just have 2 more slides. One is that with some of our customers, who have, for example, Aruba as their NAC solution, we have integrated with NAC so that as we detect events on the network, we can send traps and events to NAC, a NAC system, for example, to take an action, to remediate, to stop something immediately. So we've done that with some of our customers. So looking at internal activity, if they saw some funny file share activity from a client, to take the client off the network. And the last slide is one of our approaches that we're working on at the moment, and Aisling mentioned it, is whitelisting. So, you know, when you think about it, sometimes it's very hard to pick out what is bad on the network. But if you define what is good, and this is very an approach like the whitelisting approach, in terms of applications and servers and infrastructure or whatever on your network, and then alert on anything outside of that. So you have, as Aisling mentioned already, some DNS servers that are approved, proxy servers. So these are your whitelist of servers and like DNS or proxies, and put them into the system. And then if anybody on the network uses something outside the whitelist, get an alert. It's just a way of trying to detect suspicious activity. So that's one of our approaches, and we think it helps with GDPR as well. So that's just a very quick take on what we've been up to with GDPR and compliance, and trying to help our customers, because primarily, to be honest, our customers coming to us and said, we have your system, you know, we want to buy as little as possible. So, you know, help us with some reports and some whitelisting and so on to help us with achieve GDPR. So that's what we've been up to. I hope that's okay, guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think it was perfect. And to be honest, you made a very good point. The fact that GDPR is so vague, I think it confuses many people. Yes, the guides and things like that, but once again, they open for discussion, and ultimately is the end user the one that has to make sure that that's in place. But with policies such as you may do that and you should look at that without being very specific, sometimes is quite tricky for an end user to make the right decision. So by all means, leveraging tools that are already there, or like yours that are looking at network activity and things like that to obviously be able to cover those gaps, I think is extremely valuable. Perfect. So I think we now have the Q&A session. There's no outstanding questions. We pretty much asked them as they were coming. Guys of the audience, if you guys have any question, please feel free to type it. We'll give a few minutes. If there's no more questions, we'll probably wrap it up and close it. There don't seem to be any questions, nice link. So how is it licensed? Okay, fair enough. There's a question by Adrian, who's been the most active. So John or Aisling, do you guys want to explain how you license LANGuardian?
Sure, yeah. We license based on, as Aisling mentioned already, the number of locations on your network that you want to monitor. So that's the number of sensors, and also the number of users on your network. They are the two dynamics that we have. So depending on the number of users you have, you go into one bucket, and then you say, I want 5 sensors, and then that's how we price it.
Makes sense. So just to make it clear, it's based on the number of users, potentially employees that you have on your network, and also you have an add-on on a per remote location basis. So every remote location is going to have a probe, and therefore it will be one license driven by the number of users, the other by the amount of probes that you deploy. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, people might say they might initially monitor their server VLAN, for example, and they will build out as they over time. So that's correct.
Fantastic, perfect. So, any more questions from anyone? It doesn't seem to be more questions from the audience, so I think we can wrap it up. Aisling, John, thank you so much for joining us today. I think it's been very useful, and I hope the audience also found it as useful as we did. As I said, this webinar has been recorded, so we will be sending out the recording to all attendees. There are a few things that I need to follow it up, Adrian, with you regarding the Cisco ACI and how to deploy LANGuardian in extremely micro-segmented environments. And if at any point in time, even offline, you guys have any questions, feel free to mail us, and we'll answer those questions as soon as possible. With that said, I think it's time to close up. Again, thank you very much, John and Aisling.
Thanks everybody for dialing in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Aziz. Thanks everybody at Prosperon, and thank you.
Okay, you have a good day now. Thank you very much.